भैया इसमें वो पुर्जा नहीं है, ये जो आपके हाथ में मेरा आप ही ले लिए। कहाँ है यार?
आपका ये सवाल मैं ज्वाइन करूँगा।
आप बिल्कुल जैसा आप चाहें हाँ हाँ बिल्कुल आप
आगे बैठो।
इधर आ जाइए, इधर आ जाइए। ठीक है।
आप दोनों में से एक आदमी कैमरा हैंडल करेगा ना, तो एक आगे आ जाएगी। आदमी मतलब व्यक्ति से था। अपर्णा नाराज हो रही है।
नहीं नहीं बिल्कुल नहीं।
हम लोगों की भाषा इतनी सेक्सिस्ट है। बिग बॉस देखती हो?
जी।
उस पे बैन लग गया है। प्राइम टाइम पे बैन लग गया है। हाँ वो उस लेकिन कहा ना उसने। हाँ
मार्था?
क्या? अच्छा लेकिन यार कोबरा कैसे?
Why don't you both of you also
मुझे पता नहीं कि वो कहते हैं हाईएस्ट टीआरपी है। So before we formally begin, I want to take cue from the co-panelists. I'm supposed to moderate. So all the panelist friends are here. Balram ji, Prabhat Kumar and Biju. The topic is need for collaboration and collective strategy. So if you focus on the sort of specifics of climate change and related ecological issues, and I begin with the political or the context of this collaboration, because the kind of complex situation we have in South Asia, like for India being the largest country, is held responsible for a whole lot of things, sometimes rightly and sometimes because of sheer, a kind of world order compulsions, I would say, because Indians, at least the Indian establishment, can't be presumptuous to think that Nepali citizen will also think about the concerns of Indian state. So that's a bit too much to expect. So that causes bit of complication in the discourse. So how civil society relates to issues of democracy, issues of world order, issues of context. I want to sort of raise some of those issues which for paucity of time will not be possible to sort of for us to have a kind of concluding thing in that. But at least in tea break and lunch, we can plan a future kind of workshop on the context itself, not just climate change. So this is just to provoke that and to take rest of the house on board on the difficult dilemmas and difficult questions which we have. So I try to raise that. Is that okay, sir? And this is primarily with a motive to not to seek an agreement immediately and not to seek a respective country positions, but to plan something which is provocative enough, but still raised in a future workshop done in a kind of constructive and inclusive manner. That's the motive I have in mind. I don't know how you look at it. Bijuji, is that okay?
Yes, but I suppose it falls upon us to also address the present context of how why we are here. The current context.
That is Aparna's job. Aims and objectives of the that is Ajay.
Collective strategy. How we
Welcome and introduction by Aparna, and then aims and objective of today's consultation by Ajay. And our job is to evolve collaborative collective strategy. That's the brief for our session. So, could you amplify your comment?
No, what I meant to say was how we are going to approach Cancun from beyond Copenhagen point of view, and
Okay.
even beyond Cancun, yes.
Yeah. Now it has to be beyond Cancun.
No,
No.
it can remain beyond
So,
Copenhagen. Beyond Copenhagen
yeah,
is everything then.
Yeah. We can even question our own name, re-Christian ourselves after Cancun. ठीक
मुझे
है.
लगता है कि
Any other
अपर्णा जी
feedback?
को
Yeah, sir.
अवसर दीजिए क्योंकि वो
किनको?
औपचारिक स्वागत करें उसके बाद ही-
शुरू कर दें?
हाँ करें।
अच्छा, वो
क्योंकि ये भी रिलेवेंट डिस्कशन ही हो रहा है।
चलता फिरता माइक है? नहीं, वो
आप लोग
मिल
तो
जाएगा.
नहीं आसन
You can arrange it.
ग्रहण करेंगे तो अच्छा लगेगा।
अरे नहीं यार, ये अच्छा लग रहा है.
एक वो निकल जाएगा.
लेकिन आसन ग्रहण करेंगे अगर तीनों वक्ता तो अच्छा लगेगा।
चेयर पे ही तो बैठे हैं हम.
स्टेज पे है। उससे हम लोगों को भी अच्छा लगेगा।
उससे यहाँ पे-
क्या हाल है?
वेलकम कर दीजिए बुला लीजिए।
On behalf of the Beyond Copenhagen Coalition, I extend a warm welcome to all our guests. A special welcome to Mr. Balram Banskota from Nepal and Mr. G. A. Prabhat Kumar from Sri Lanka. I'd like to really appreciate that all of us have gathered here today on an important discussion on forging solidarity and a common approach on climate change. I hope this meeting initiates good discussions and is helpful in also taking forward the country position at international forums. So I'd just like to welcome everyone again, and I'd like to hand over to Ajay to please.
Can you also request this panelists and Ajay and Vijay Pratap ji to share us?
I'd like to call on the dais Shri Vijay Pratap ji, who's chairing our session on need for collaboration and collective strategy.
And also Balram ji.
Mr. Balram Banskota, please. Mr. G. A. Prabhat Kumar and Mr. Biju Negi.
अजय
नहीं, चेयर ऊपर करें.
मैं मिलता हूँ.
आइए, प्लीज. राम जी, प्लीज. प्लीज. नहीं, दोनों तरफ से इंडियंस का घेराबंदी रहेगा.
But three-sided from India and one from China.
A very, very warm welcome to all of you. Thanks, Aparna, for welcoming them on behalf of the organizers. Before I begin, can we have a brief round of introductions from the participants? Just brief round of introduction. धीरे संक्षेप में अपना परिचय.
You share. भारत के
Bharat?
That's it, that's it.
Guys,
Uh,
is it working?
yes.
Yeah.
My name is Prabhat Kumar. I represent Sri Lanka. I represent civil society organization. We are working in organization called Uva Farmers Collective on poison-free agriculture. We are based in Uva province. So we are really interested in the issues in climate change. And we are networking with other networks in Sri Lanka, like Monla Movement for National Land Agriculture Reforms organizations. So thank you for inviting us for this important event.
My name is Vijay Pratap. I live in Delhi since 65, and since 68 I have been part of the socialist movement, mostly in the non-party space, and I am one of the volunteers of Sharad Joshi ji in this collective called Beyond Copenhagen so far.
My name is Balram. I am from All Nepal Peasant Federation. It's a mass-based organization. Basically, I am agriculture worker. By Hindu religion, Balram is known as the man of agriculture. That's why I am very glad my father or the mother put my name Balram, as my life is with agriculture. I am exercising in that part.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Biju Negi. I am from Uttarakhand, which is a neighboring, which neighbors or Nepal from its southern boundary. I belong to a farmers collective called the Bij Bachao Andolan. It's a collective of small and marginal farmers. And my interest in climate change here is because of that very issue of agriculture, which I find is not included in international negotiations and discussions. Thank you.
नमस्ते सभी को। भारत भूषण नाम है मेरा। मैं उत्तर प्रदेश से हूँ, फैजाबाद जिले में काम करता हूँ। पानी नाम का एक ऑर्गेनाइजेशन है उसके साथ, और कोपेनहेगन बियॉन्ड के साथ भी जुड़ा हुआ हूँ।
शरद जोशी सिकोरिकॉन नाम से एक संस्था है।
अंग्रेजी में जो कर सकें
I'm also
because of Prabhat ji and
member of
some
Beyond
other friends.
मैं रघुपति बिहार में काम करता हूँ, सामाजिक कार्य करता हूँ, संस्था से जुड़ा हुआ हूँ, समता ग्राम से, और शरद जोशी और पैरवी के साथ आदि के साथ मिलकर
ट्रांसलेट साथ साथ करेंगे।
Introduction to
You don't follow. He is Raghupati ji. He is from Bihar. He has NGO and he is part of Beyond Copenhagen. He mentioned other leading colleagues.
He is also very senior activist in people's movement.
He is a senior socialist ideologue. His public life dates back since early 60s, first half of 60s.
My name is Jayesh Bhairavya. I am from Ahmedabad, Gujarat. I am practicing lawyer in a High Court, and I am Executive Secretary of All India Foundation of Social Justice and Human Rights with the Dr. B.R. Ambedkar Education Society. I am administrating the 3 law colleges where the 3,000 students are studying in a different 3 law colleges, which is situated in a remote area of the Gujarat state. And we are in a mass movement of a legal awareness on a climate and the social upliftment issues.
मैं रीता कुमारी बिहार की रहने वाली हूँ। अभी दिल्ली में 108 स्लम एरिया है, उसमें मैं काम करती हूँ। मजदूरों को भी, नारी को भी, जो समस्या।
She is Rita. She belongs to Bihar but lives in Delhi and has started working in slums with 108 slums, but she has started recently.
Good morning to all. I am Sanjay Jodhe, basically from Madhya Pradesh, and I am a part of the CY20.
मैं राजकुमार यादव, मैं खेती के काम से जुड़ा हुआ हूँ और बाल श्रमिक विद्यालय चलाता हूँ और ईट भट्ठा चाय बागान संगठन के मजदूरों को संगठित करता हूँ।
I organize the workers from tea gardens and brick kilns and also run schools for them. नाम क्या बोला यादव जी आप?
राजकुमार यादव, बिहार से।
राजकुमार यादव from Bihar. Which district?
कौन सा जिला?
किशनगंज।
किशनगंज।
मेरा नाम अलीमुद्दीन अंसारी है, मैं बिहार से हूँ। हिंद खेत मजदूर पंचायत जो ग्रामीण मजदूरों का संगठन है, ईट भट्ठा चाय बागान एग्रीकल्चर और असंगठित क्षेत्र के तमाम मजदूरों का ये संगठन है। इसका सदस्य संख्या 95,000 है।
आपके रीजन
जी।
देश में तो आपकी यूनियन का बहुत ज़्यादा है।
हाँ,
कितना है?
95,000 है। वो 8 जिले में बिहार का उत्तरी क्षेत्र है।
He is organizing the unorganized sector, agriculture workers, brick kiln workers, and tea garden workers. He is in the close to Nepal-Bangladesh border, Purnia district, and his union membership is 95,000. And he is like Raghupati ji, he is also very senior. Alimuddin Ansari is his name. And he is also, which he didn't mention, is also organizing the oppressed and OBC Muslims on the plank of equality.
Myself Admati, I am from Orissa. Now I am working Salary Workers Organization in Delhi.
आप लोगों को राजकुमार जी हिंदी समझ आएगा ना इतना?
जी
अंग्रेजी
जी
समझते हैं ना? बोलने में दिक्कत? रीता मोटा मोटी समझ आएगा? Yes.
I'm Corrado from Italy. I'm doing an internship in Five, conducting research on climate change.
My name is Martha. I'm from the United States, and I'm also an intern at Fairview doing similar work.
I am Birot from Nepal. From last 2 years, I am in Delhi, and I work for SARET.
SARET is part of the coalition. It's called South Asian Dialogues on Ecological Democracy.
Thank you to all of you, and again a warm welcome. Before we begin, I would like to introduce the Beyond Copenhagen Coalition and how it was formed and how it has evolved. In the run-up to COP15, basically, the concept was originated and it got strengthened in the national consultation that we organized in the run-up to COP15. Began from a modest number of 5-6 NGOs, lead NGOs, which you can see in the footer of the agenda. But now this coalition comprises of more than 40 NGOs, grassroots organizations, some of them working at state level, some of them working at national level, some of them like SARET and other organizations working at South Asia region. The main objective of this coalition is to bring more focus on agriculture and food security in climate change negotiations, because right since our preparation for the COP16, we realized that there has been a lot of discussion on industries and emission reduction in transport, but not so much discussion on agriculture and food security, which is very critical in the context of South Asia. Most of the countries being mainly dependent on agriculture, the South Asia region and the impact of climate change have wreaked havoc on agriculture and food security. That is not such a big concern for the developed countries, and the developed countries see agriculture as being the main contributor in GHG emissions, and it is estimated that along with LULUCF, land use change and deforestation, it contributes to approximately 17% of the total GHG emission. So the prime objective of the coalition has been to bring more and collective voices and bring more focus on agricultural and food security in international negotiations as well as at national policy development. We have been working nationally, but this year the efforts have been extended to forge a greater collaboration of NGOs and civil society organizations also in South Asia, and as a result we try to invite NGOs from Pakistan and Afghanistan and Bangladesh, but due to paucity of time it could not be possible. The objective of this meeting is to how to take this thinking of bringing more focus and collaboration on agriculture and food security related issues also at national levels in South Asian countries and at COP16. As far as the current status of the negotiations are concerned, we have seen that two preceding meetings in Bonn in April and June and the meeting in Shenzhen in October has completely failed to bring all the parties to some amount of consensus, which these meetings were supposed to do. And even though we approach COP16 in less than 3 weeks now, there is no consensus even on ad hoc working group on Kyoto Protocol or ad hoc working group on long-term cooperative action. In the last meeting, there has been little development in the text and negotiations in ad hoc working group on long-term cooperative action, and certain modalities have been discussed with regard to cooperation in agriculture and finance and technology transfer. But it's very surprising that there has been no reasonable and corresponding development in ad hoc working group on Kyoto Protocol, which is one of the main pillars of the Bali Action Plan and aims directly at achieving binding reduction commitment from the developed countries. Earlier, we have been saying that developing countries do not have to be pressurized for binding commitments right now. But now, 2 months back, we had a small meeting with President designate for the COP16, external minister of Mexico, and also lead negotiator of the Mexico in climate change negotiations, and looking at the lack of possibility to have some binding set of commitments in COP16, they have rather trifurcated the agenda for the COP16. Now we are looking at sort of 3 agreements. One can be for Annex 1 countries, developed countries in Annex 1 list. The other can be for non-annex developed countries, and US is the only country which is in that category, and this flexibility has been extended to the US, looking at the relation that it shares with Mexico. And all of us know that the economy of Mexico is very much, not only economy but also polity is very much dependent on what happens in the US. So US is the only country which falls in the possibilities that we are looking at, and it might result in some kind of commitment on behalf of US, and they will be in the category of non-annex developed countries. Then definitely there are some possibilities of again putting pressure on developing countries to have some kind of not binding but some kind of commitments which fall into monitorable, reasonable and verifiable commitments. With the last visit of Mr. Obama and the midterm election preceding his visit has shown that his capacity this time in the COP16 to take binding commitments will be still less. In these circumstances, I would not like to undermine the importance of COP16, yet I would definitely like to underline that the possibilities of having a balanced set of outcomes is least likely, and even before we have come to COP16, people have started talking about COP17 in South Africa, sorry. So presently, this is the current state of negotiations at international level. Few developments with regard to agriculture and rights of Mother Earth have been very positive, in the sense that in the text for the negotiations, few provisions from declaration of the Climate Change People's Conference in Bolivia has been included, which reflects on which mainly pertains to agricultural cooperation and technology transfer from developed countries to developing countries, and also puts emphasis on the rights of Mother Earth and mainly advocates giving up the attitude of mining and agriculture. So this, I would say, is the state of negotiations for now. But it also sort of presents an opportunity for the civil society organizations that while the negotiations are in the limbo, we can maybe if we can come up to a collectivist strategy on bringing more focus on agriculture, it might be helpful to the issue and cause and primarily for the sustainability of South Asian countries. So with these words, I would like to hand over the proceedings to Shri Vijay Pratap ji. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Ajay ji. Very learned presentation, and you have set the agenda very ably. Actually, what we were discussing before the session, in the non-session, as non-papers in the diplomatic language, so I changed my mind after such a profound, elaborate presentation by Ajay ji. I would urge him to be available here. Ajay ji, I request you to come here, because it's not just initiating this discussion, you are needed here as a resource person also to the House, because I don't think all of us, some must have, but all of us have not followed the international negotiations since Bali Action Plan. You trace the whole thing. I would go back a little bit to just put the context that Copenhagen was a big retreat, in the sense the cardinal principle of Kyoto Protocol was jettisoned, the polluter pays, and the idea of justice was jettisoned. And now everyone, the US corporations primarily, or led by US corporations, and it's paradoxical that Bush couldn't do it. A relatively progressive president was, because of his legitimacy, was able to jettison the idea of justice from the global negotiations. Now the polluters and those who are seeking to develop, they are put in the same bracket. And in that there is a further, almost a kind of, in the global design, least developed countries are dealt separately, and they are organized against what is now being called emerging economies. Brazil and South Africa and India and China. So the smaller countries, least developed countries particularly, are being organized by the big powers, European Union countries or US, to be pitted against the emerging economies, that you first ask China and India and this and that country to lower down their emissions, ignoring the fact that if we follow the development model which they want us to follow, because of the survival of elite of the entire developed world, they want us to follow a model which is not sustainable, which is consuming fossil fuels, which requires high intensity of energy even in agriculture operations, and they want us to open our markets, which in turn would mean that small retailer will in India, which is not consuming much of electricity, will be displaced by big malls, big retail chains. So more and more energy, more and more consumption of fossil fuels will take place, and more emissions will take place. Now, this kind of double bind is to destroy our economy. It is very suicidal, not for us only, but for them as well. As long as Kyoto Protocol was in place, it put a pressure on the elite of southern countries, on the global south, including South Asian elite, that we have to rethink about our development model. We have to develop and grow in a manner which is ecologically sound, because our elite have been conditioned not to look at the sustainable ways of development. So that context is very important to bear in mind. For example, Balramji is in his political inclination, his present organization is close to UML. Now, these four major players in Nepal, the Nepali Congress, the Maoist, Communist Party Nepal, United Marxist-Leninist, to which he is close, and Madhesi parties. These four are the principal actors. Now, they have almost a consensus that they have to piggy ride, as Prachand called, when the election was over in 19th April, 2 years earlier. A delegation of Socialist International met Mr. Prachand. I was part of the delegation, and on the development model, he said, go and tell the international SI delegation, SI Socialist International headquarters is in London. So he said, please go and tell Europeans and also Americans, because there was one American that we are not terrorists, one. And we want to develop. We want foreign direct investment. And we want to we are very fortunate to have India and China, which are the fastest growing economies in the world, and we want to piggy ride. Now, their self-image is that they are the most radical. They can question and after elections, when they became the first party, their person number 2 in ideologue stature, he is number 1, Mr. Baburam Bhattarai. He became the Deputy Prime Minister and Finance Minister. Vamdev Gautam was Deputy Prime Minister, his close friend and probably relative also. So, you just go to the website of World Bank, and the kind of statements Mr. Baburam Bhattarai made about the development model. He is seen after Ramsaran Mahat, who has been finance minister in the Congress party, which is seen more conservative in economic terms, which was more conservative. But on development model, there is a consensus. Madhesis would like a close collaboration with the Indian business elite, not with the Indian agriculturists, not with the Indian peasant movement. If people with long-standing relationship with India, when they come, they will rather talk to a peon in a party which is pushing the destructive development model than talk to their comrades. So there is a absolute consensus. Mr. Vamdev Gautam, very committed person, he opposed a Pancheshwar dam. Dams are very important in terms of emitting methane. He opposed it not because it is against the present development model, but because the value addition of the electricity produced was not satisfactory, so he split the party. So even those who take a stand against the development model which those who are seeking to rediscover the sustainable development model, that they do not find any support whatsoever in the establishment. So Vamdev ji split the party because to preempt the Indian hegemony on Pancheshwar Dam. Again the party got reunited. Now he is leading the most, he is a close friend also, and so this is not anything personal, it is political positions. He is leading one of the most important peasant organization, probably in South Asia. In actual terms, this must be the largest living peasant organization in South Asia. That's my, there were about 40 plus countries, international delegates, when they had their convention about 3 years from now. So, but if you discuss the model of agriculture development, Indian Green Revolution is held in high respect, which has created total mess in Punjab agriculture. And how our establishment behaves, our meaning all entire South Asia. One leader in Congress party, paradoxically enough, Shailja Acharya, one former deputy prime minister, she opposed that dam on the ecological grounds. And when Indian foreign minister went, they were together in the movement. Indian foreign minister at that time was Yashwant Sinha. He wanted to visit, she was unwell at that time, she is no more. He wanted to visit Shailja Acharya, the former deputy prime minister. Indian embassy did not allow the foreign minister. Embassy dictates our foreign minister because she is anti-Indian. How is she anti-Indian? Because she opposed that Pancheshwar dam. So whenever some leader by accident opposes this kind of development model, he is seen not as anti-dam and not as particular development model, but as the entire country. So this is the view of our establishment. This is the view of even the environmentalists. He is not his ideological fellow traveler, but in environment sense, the best environmentalists we collaborate. We have recently formed one alliance, South Asian Initiative on Ecological Swaraj, in which people close to him, Deepak Bhatt is there and Hari Roka, friends like so. But the leading environmentalists of Nepal are Ajay Dikshit, Deepak Gavali. Now, their whole opposition to these dams is not per se that should there be dams or not dams. So, it is where should be the value addition if dam produces electricity. The value addition should be in Kathmandu Valley or in the borders or in the Madhesh region or in partnership with India. They had a very radical leader, Mr. Acharya, his daughter Meena Acharya, economist, leading activist. She says to combat the hegemony of neighbors, we'll collaborate with Enron, with the American multinationals. So that is the kind of mixed up feelings. I started with saying that US and the Europe Union design is to organize the LDC countries against us. But the real fact is it is not just LDC countries. It is our own elite in India and elite in other neighboring South Asian countries which genuinely believes that what we consider as destructive and unsustainable development model is if we for shorthand call it American consumer paradise. They think, our elite thinks, whether it is in South or North, and Copenhagen has reinforced that, given that space, given that possibility to continue to think that way, because the polluter principle is knocked out of the negotiation. Now we think the chasing American consumer paradise is not only desirable, it is also feasible. That is the genuine in quotes, thinking of our elites. So this is the context in which we have to be very careful. This Bolivia conference, that's why was a big advance, that because of it they have 18 declarations, of which 4 have found some mention in the negotiation. But that is more like co-option. It's taking wind out of those, that wholesome design. So we all should focus on Cancun, what happens, but as civil society, our important task is twofold. One, to monitor those negotiations closely and bifurcate the interest of American people, European Union people, and European Union corporations, and American corporations, and Indian corporations. Globally, all corporations have united, and even our political elite is still believing in the ideas of last century's early decades, and is not doing hard enough thinking. So during Cancun, we have to be careful about the issues which Ajay mentioned. Post Cancun, we have to come back and learn from them whether it was a further regression in the same Copenhagen direction, or could we retrieve something from the Kyoto Protocol, the idea of justice, the idea of alternative development. That is the basic issue. And from this viewpoint, Cancun and beyond Cancun, these two are the linked issues, and I would like the panelists to throw light first on the Cancun related issues, as Ajay ji very ably laid out, and then the possibility of continuing this collaborative effort after Cancun also. How shall we go about it? And not only in because beyond Copenhagen, this collaboration is not based on funding only. Funding is a very critical aspect, and we do need funds for doing things. Very many meetings of this kind are not possible unless we have some institutional support. But for all the critical work, it is not always necessary to have funds, and what we do without funds will determine the nature of funding work also. So we urge you to sort of develop ideas which are also in non-project mode, which are in the mode of people-to-people collaboration. It could be just an e-group, it could be exchange of ideas, it could be keeping each other in the loop, it could be sharing the articles and new insights, it could be sharing the struggles which are taking place on the ground to further the cause of sustainable development model, and fight from the justice viewpoint, combat the challenge of climate crisis. So this is the overall context in which this collaboration called Beyond Copenhagen was created. Now we want to expand it, make it more inclusive, and make people from marginalized communities, Janjatis, Dalit, who will be worse hit, because agriculture workers will be worse hit, and most of the agriculture workers are from, as you know, Dalit. And we don't want to just repeat it as politically correct language. We want to actually, that's why people like Alimuddin Ansari and other friends are here, who have some idea of the agriculture workers. Raghupati ji in Bihar has been working on this twin challenge. Some groups work on flood and some on famine. Raghupati ji's banner is called Baad Sukhad Mukti, liberation from flood, famine. So they come together. Even at the same time they come, because of the new change situation. So we have to make this platform very inclusive, and we are very happy that from India Bijuji is initiating, because Himalaya is for the entire South Asia and probably for the entire planet. It's called third pole. So it's a very happy thing that you are here. So shall we start from Prabhatji? Sorry for taking long. When you don't know much, then you take long. You ramble more.
First of all, let me thank you for inviting for this very important event. Mr. Saraj ji and Ajay ji from both organizations. I would like to show a paper cutting from Sri Lanka.
You can pass it on.
Yes.
You can have a look.
What I want to focus is that this is our parliament building. So we call it in Sinhala is Villa Meda Bangalawa. It's a bungalow in lake. It was designed in that manner. We are one of the greatest architects in Sri Lanka. But what I want to stress is that within 20 years, it has gone under water. So the planning of Sri Lanka, the policymakers, decision makers, planners could not plan for at least for another 100 years in a crucial building, important building, vital, important, where the planning takes place in Sri Lanka. So 1 week back, 440 MN floods in Colombo. After 18 years, heavy floods, which took Parliament into water. So Parliament sitting was stopped, and the Speaker and the parliamentarians went into the Parliament sitting with army trucks, and it was adjourned. It took only 8 minutes in the Parliament because they have to adjourn. Then I will show another paper cutting. So this is our agroforestry calling for interest for resurgence of giving lands to multinational corporations. At least 70,000 hectares land grabbing takes place for multinational corporation, including India, to grow sugarcane monoculture. North and East, where the war took place. So it's very contradictory what they do and what they plan in connection with climate change or climate variability. Please pass this. Then we have in 2000 we have the initial national communication under the United Nations Framework Convention